when I say we, I talk about you and us, the CTU and the PSA, have been doing work around the future of the union movement together. We've been building through our work our values proposition, what we stand for, why we exist, what we want to achieve, and why that's important to the New Zealand public, workers including. We do stand for a fair deal at work, for respect, for strong, accessible public services, and for fairness at work. And it's very, very important. It's a credible message for working people, and the challenge for us, particularly now, is what we do in the future to make sure that it continues to be progressive, it continues to be understood, and we build a movement that people genuinely identify with. The reality is the Council of Trade Unions as an organisation is under incredible pressure. Unions, our affiliates, had membership losses last year, particularly through the huge redundancies in the traditional sectors that remain and continue to be unionised, massive job losses in industries like manufacturing, like public services, like wood processing, where traditional union membership exists. And that affected both those unions and their financial basis for working, but also the Council of Trade Unions who relies on those affiliations. And so we do need to think as an organisation, and I include you in this, about what we can do over the next period that adds value to our affiliates and to workers generally, what we can be successful about. We cannot spend 3 years fighting everything this government does that we disagree with, issue by issue, piece by piece. We have to identify some strategic priorities that we know we can win regardless of the government, that we can bring people in with, allow them to participate in an easy way and make progress on their experiences of work. We need to identify our vision 20 years out and then step that back to the next 3 years and make sure at worst this government doesn't damage that vision in the long term, and at best that we make progress towards achieving it. And that's the discussion, the very, very important discussion that we need to have. We've got campaigns going that we intend to continue doing, which in my view contribute to that idea that we are being successful at and can continue to be successful at. And one of them is the forestry campaign, which I want to thank your organisation for the incredible support that you've done, but health and safety generally. There's a mood in New Zealand, a momentum in New Zealand to improve health and safety at work. And I want to acknowledge the physical and verbal attacks on public servants that are growing in this country that seem to have become acceptable. That people I've seen on Twitter saying, well, you know, they deserved it. Well, this will teach people a lesson about their interactions with public servants. Outrageous acceptance of violence and bullying in the workplace, and even murder in this instance. And we have to create the narrative about what this means for people going to work every day, what it feels like to be under that sort of threat. And I want to acknowledge the work your union did in the middle of that crisis in WINS, but also we have to work out what that means for us long term and how we push back against, you know, who's making the decisions and who's implementing them, and how all public services are under stress and pressure to deliver in very, very difficult circumstances, and how it's not okay to turn that community dilemma into attacks on the people doing the work. So health and safety is an area where we can continue to build and have success. Wages is an area where we can continue to build and have success, both through our bargaining and how we do that, and I want to talk a little bit about that, but also through our strategic campaigns like the campaign on equal pay. The campaign on equal pay, including the court case that has gone through the court which your union supported, is now at risk. Even if the Court of Appeal find that the Equal Pay Act now allow female-dominated occupations to take equal pay claims using male comparators, it is my view that the government will change the law. The implications of that case on female-dominated occupations are huge. But I also think we can use whatever happens with that case as a massive opportunity to build public support for underpaid, undervalued female occupations, which employ 54% of the New Zealand population. We can use that case and any attack on it to bring women into the union movement, to bring men into the union movement, to tell the story, the narrative about what unequal pay actually means in terms of its its comment on that work, but also its impact on communities, and we can use it to build a campaign demanding equal pay for work of equal value. Our campaign on the living wage, we need to re-look at that and work out how we drive that into sectors where workers are not being paid fairly. It has got a public buy-in. People are now talking about it like it actually exists, the living wage. That's something the union movement has created, and I think we can make it more sophisticated, and we need to tell the story about how many public servants, for example, are living below what we would call, earning below what we would call a living wage. There's an opportunity there. So generally what we need to do, both the Council of Trade Unions and the PSA and all of the affiliates, in my view, is identify the areas that we need to really focus our strategic energy onto and push forward as a movement to build those up. I guess for that to be successful, we need to have an understanding of the capability of each affiliate and what their priorities are and how they link together. And what we're starting to do immediately is to have those conversations within the council. So we're meeting, and Richard's coming to a lot of these meetings, with national secretaries and senior executive members across the union movement, talking about their challenges and working out as a movement which ones we can pull together, do together, and how that builds into the work of the CTU. And I just want to talk about a couple of areas which I think we need to be prepared for. So the first is that the Employment Relations Bill will be passed probably within the next 6 to 8 weeks. And it's been through the Select Committee, it's been through 2 readings. All it will take is a final vote of Parliament, and the government has said it's a priority. And we know, there are some very bad sort of basic things in that bill about removing the right to a tea break and a lunch break. That will go through, and there will be workers. There will be hundreds and thousands of workers in this country already not getting tea breaks and lunch breaks, but there'll be many, many more where that will be denied. And I went during the selection campaign to the Heinz Waddies factory in Hawke's Bay, and they told me that during the high season, when all the veggies come in, the labour hire workers that they bring in, who are usually in their 60s, women who live in that community, who use that opportunity to get some extra income into their households, before the Labour government brought in the right to a tea break and a lunch break, at lunchtime, the workers in the union, that were the permanent workers at Heinz Waddies, would go off and have their lunch, and the labour hire workers would work through. And it led to one woman working there actually collapsing on the chain, and it was just luck that she didn't fall into the chain when she fainted. And when they rang at that time, the Department of Labour, they were told there was no right for a tea break, and if there wasn't an injury, the Department of Labour wasn't going to investigate it. And so the reality is that tea breaks and lunch breaks will be denied, particularly for those workers without those rights, but the most important attack will be on the collective bargaining. And now 75% of us rely on income for our economic well-being. We don't have shares, we don't have extra houses that we rent out, we don't have businesses, we don't have big bank accounts earning us heaps of interest. We rely on income. Income is a very important common denominator, not only across the union movement, but across working people generally. And what we know is that 98% of those in the union got a pay increase last year, and 43% of New Zealanders didn't at all. So the reality is collective bargaining is the only effective way to deliver pay increases, regular pay increases to working people. Now, we know they've been small, and we know they've been a struggle to win, and congratulations to all of your members who have fought to win a pay increase. But the reality is you had a mechanism through collective bargaining to do that, and it proved to be successful, didn't it? You took some action, and you got your pay increase, and you moved on. But the government wants to end that power. That's what this bill is about. And they've said that themselves. The Cabinet papers say it will allow employers to reduce wages. And it allows your employer to go into collective bargaining but walk away without concluding. And when we met with Bill English before the election, and we said after they lost John Banks, they couldn't get that law through, we said, how about getting rid of it? You don't need it. You keep saying you want wages to go up. This is anti that. What about getting rid of it? He said, private sector workers won't care because they're not collective bargaining. They're not getting pay increases. They won't even notice the difference. So don't tell me, Helen, that they'll help you or that they'll recognise it or that that'll be a hit against them. But I've got cabinet ministers around my cabinet table that want more flexibility when it comes to negotiating with teachers and nurses. That's what he said. Now, he doesn't just mean teachers and nurses. He means public sector. And if they start anywhere, they won't start with teachers and nurses. They'll start with hospital support staff. They'll start with school support staff. They'll start with admin workers in core public sector. They'll start with those workers that they consider of less value than what you might call, the qualified workers in the health sector or in the education sector. And then they'll move on to the teachers and the nurses and the others. But what a chilling message. There are members around my cabinet table that want more flexibility. So we have to be ready for that. We have to think about what that means, and as a movement, what we do. And if you want some immediate ideas, we are beginning to identify large collective agreements where we think there'll be a risk of the employer refusing to settle. The immediate ones, the Port of Auckland, they will never settle that collective under this regime. They will go to the court and get it ended. I don't know what we're going to do about that, but we have to have a strategy about that. But the AFCO Meatworks is the most obvious one. 2,500 workers in our poorest communities, in Wairoa, in Te Puke, in Fielding, in Morewa, those workers are in the middle of bargaining with Tallies, and Tallies has told the union, we want to wait till after the election, because we don't want a collective agreement in this site, because the thing that is in the collective that matters to those workers is the guarantee of re-employment season to season, the seniority clause they call it. Without it, each season those workers can line up and beg for a job. And that is the future. My view is that is an opportunity in those communities for the union movement, if we want to get out there now, to talk to the residents in Wairoa, the teachers, the nurses, all of those people that supported those meat workers in the last dispute, to talk to the workers in Te Puke. The WINS workers in Te Puke were fantastic during the AFCO dispute. Let's go and talk to them about what's coming and bring them into the community and to support those workers. So I guess what we're trying to say here is there are opportunities and risks with this government, but I want us to focus on the opportunities, and I want us to work as a movement to support you, to support them, to support workers of the future, not just the present, and to ensure we come out at the end of this with something intact that we can be proud of, that's promoted our values, and that's made people identify clearly with an alternative that the union movement can identify with. So I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail about all our campaigns today, which is what I would do pre-election. But post-election, I want us to spend time reflecting. And I want us to really think about what your union wants to do over the next 3 years, what you think you can achieve, but what also you want the CTU to do. What you think we can push forward, develop and win on to ensure that in the next 3 years, we can look back and say, we had a good fight, we made progress, we worked for New Zealand working people. The people that set up the union movement and left us this legacy would be proud of us, and the people in the future that are going into work will want to join us. Kia ora and thank you very much.